Hate is a path to the dark side, but that doesn't mean plenty of fans don't full-on despise a lot of what Star Wars has offered up over the years. With that in mind, I'm Will for What Culture, and here are the 10 most hated Star Wars characters. 10. Boss Nass. As enticing as a Star Wars character voiced by Brian Blessed might appear on paper, it's a shame the legendary thespian's booming vocals were wasted on the gelatinous leader of the Gungans, Boss Nass. More tolerable than Jar Binks due to his sensibly limited screen time, Nass is nevertheless a bit grating to some when he's in the movie. Even Blessed's great performance can't really bring that dialogue to life, at least not in the right way. Although a lot of angry Star Wars fans are prejudiced against the Gungans already, with better writing, Nass could have been an interesting Kingpin type character. Instead, he's just a sort of dull figurehead whose mere physical presence is a bit of an eyesore. 9. The Porgs. What is any Star Wars film without at least a character or two clearly included to sell dolls, figurines, and lunchboxes? Come on, who could forget the Ewoks? The Last Jedi, meanwhile, has the Porgs, the puffin-like creatures which reside on the planet where Luke Skywalker has exiled himself. On one hand, they are cute, but on the other, they whiff of a studio calculation, as if Disney felt the film otherwise didn't have enough merchandisable new characters. That may or may not be the case, but a large portion of the fanbase swiftly expressed their disdain for the creatures long before the film was even released. At the very least, if you do hate them, you get to see Chewbacca roast one for dinner. Which, you know, that's something. 8. Newt Gunray. Newt Gunray, the prequel trilogy's most forgettable villain. A pawn of Darth Sidious, Gunray is basically a victim of the prequel trilogy's reliance on political power plays over drama, and so the audience is never given much of a reason to care about his presence. But what got a bigger backlash than was maybe expected was his accent, which some took as wildly offensive as it was clearly intended to mimic the most cartoonish of Japanese stereotypes. His inclusion is almost worth it for his unintentionally hilarious death at Anakin's hand in Revenge of the Sith, but probably still not quite. 7. Vice Admiral Holdo. Fans rejoiced when it was announced that Laura Dern had been cast in a major role in The Last Jedi, until they saw the movie. Even the half of the fanbase that really like Rian Johnson's divisive sequel don't have much nice to say about Dern's Vice Admiral Holdo, who temporarily assumes control of the Resistance after Leia is taken out of commission by Kylo Ren. Holdo controversially comes to blows with Poe during the film, speaking to him in a patronizing tone and, more egregiously, withholding information about her wider plan from him. Now, this isn't to say that Poe is blameless. His attack on the Dreadnought was reckless and cost Resistance lives, but Holdo acts erratically enough that Poe very nearly succeeds in mounting a mutiny against her, one only diffused when she actually tells him what's going on. Holdo's sacrificial and extremely cool-looking demise prevents her from ranking any lower, but a lot of fans really didn't like the direction Johnson took her character. 6. Watto. Even if Watto wasn't a garish, potentially offensive digital caricature, he'd still be the slave trader who owned Anakin Skywalker and his mother Shmi. What better reason could there be to loathe the character up front than the fact that they literally own slaves? But Watto isn't just an asshole you're supposed to dislike. He's one that, for a lot of people, felt like a cartoonish exaggeration of a Jewish man. He's the epitome of annoying, non-human Star Wars characters. Well, almost, we'll get to that later, despite making a slightly more interesting, decade-aged appearance in Attack of the Clones. You are supposed to hate Watto to an extent, he is a villain after all, but George Lucas clearly didn't realize quite how much derision this creation would attract from some of the fanbase. 5. Salacious B. Crum. Though the first time you hear Salacious B. Crum's laugh, it's actually pretty funny, his one-note shenanigans throughout The Return of the Jedi quickly wear themselves thin. Sure, there might be more vocally hated characters in Star Wars, but Crum is surely one of the most straight-up annoying. Between his ear-splitting laugh and incessant mugging, there's little wit to his character, and honestly, even less to like. Hell, even Darth Vader threatened to murder him if he didn't shut up in the 2015 comic Star Wars No. 4. Still, passion runs both ways, and Crum is actually Anthony Daniels' favourite character in the entire series. So, yeah. 4. Young Anakin Skywalker. One of the great challenges of any prequel project is introducing young versions of existing iconic characters, as George Lucas learned firsthand when he made a 9-year-old Anakin Skywalker the protagonist of The Phantom Menace. Though on paper Anakin seemed like a smart fit to give young viewers an in to the world of Star Wars, he was regrettably written to be annoyingly chirpy throughout the film, dropping in endless now memed to hell one-liners like, "Now this is pod racing." However, many fans really unfairly laid the blame at the feet of the actor, Jake Lloyd, who, like any other child actor in his position, simply had to try and make the best of Lucas's ropey dialogue and distant direction. The fact that he has suffered so much for his part in the film is well documented, and extremely disheartening. If nothing else, this portrayal of Anakin is shattering proof of just how difficult it is to go back in time and do true justice to statuesque icons of cinema. 3. Lumpy. George Lucas would most likely prefer you dismiss the Star Wars Holiday Special as a fever dream you had one night after eating some bad takeouts, but alas, it is a thing that, despite his best efforts, will always exist. The infamous 1978 TV special, which is largely accepted to be canon by the way, introduces us to Chewbacca's family, including his young son, Lumpy. In theory, the concept of Chewie Jr. has a ton of adorable potential, but Lumpy's off-puttingly creepy facial expressions completely work against the entire appeal. That is also to ignore the fact, like most original characters in the special, he exists largely to string along a series of insufferable and overlong skits. Honestly, despite all that we've said, most of the characters on this list have some upsides. Lumpy does not. Lumpy sucks. 2. Rose Tico. It is worth clarifying the difference between a bad character and a hated one, because there's actually a lot to like about Resistance Officer Rose Tico. Her chemistry with Finn in The Last Jedi was fun, and she was certainly a welcome dose of added representation to the franchise. Nevertheless, there were valid criticisms about her involvement in the story, namely the rushed romance with Finn, and the pretty cringeworthy scene where she prevents him from executing a suicidal attack maneuver. Actress Kelly Marie Tran unfortunately received abuse from online bigots for her role in the film, and when Rise of Skywalker was released, much was written about Rose's conspicuous absence, appearing in just 76 seconds of the final movie. Many interpreted this as director J.J. Abrams cowing down to a vocal social media hate campaign against Rose, effectively letting the trolls win. All in all, there are many disappointed with Rose's treatment, not to downplay the fact that some find her to be a genuinely shoehorned in and thinly developed character. 1. Jar Binks. Was anyone else ever going to get the number 1 spot? For many, Jar Binks represents everything that is wrong with the Star Wars prequels, an over-reliance on CGI and excessive pandering to children. The Gungan sidekick Jar Jar debuts in The Phantom Menace as the primary source of comic relief. His clumsy slapstick and silly voice intended to give us all a chuckle between the discussions about trade routes and the such like. However, audiences above the age of 10 more often found Jar Jar a great annoyance than in any way entertaining. Beyond his mere grating presence and ultimately being inadvertently responsible for Emperor Palpatine's rise to power, he was also held by many to be a blatant Caribbean stereotype. The vitriol was significant enough that J.J. Abrams actually considered putting his bones in the Jakku Desert in The Force Awakens. The infamous Darth Jar Jar theory was even cobbled together to try and rationalize his presence in the prequels, which was increasingly cut down throughout the trilogy as Lucas came to appreciate the vocal disdain. Sadly, however, the overwhelming hatred for Jar Jar had a significant impact on his performer Ahmed Best, who even considered suicide due to the intense media scrutiny of the character and his performance. Just another example of the Star Wars fanbase being pretty terrible when it comes to online abuse. And there you have it, folks, the 10 most hated characters in Star Wars. Despite a lot of fans not liking them, a lot of these characters have good qualities too. Do you agree or disagree with this list? Let us know down below. I'm Will for What Culture, thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you next time.